Recording in progress.
Good evening.
Mayor, are you there? Mayor?
Yes, I am.
Okay, would you like to start the meeting?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. This time I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's second budget work session, fiscal year 2023-24. Do we have a pledge of allegiance yet? We did? Very good. I'd like everyone for attending tonight's second budget work session for 2023-24. Before we begin this evening, I would like to remind everyone of the upcoming budget work sessions, which have been posted on the village's website, published in the paper, and sent out via social media. The meeting dates are as follows: Thursday, March 23rd, and Thursday, March 30th. All of these meetings are from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. will be held in the boardroom via Zoom. The village is scheduled to adopt the 2023-24 budget at the annual organizational meeting on Monday, April 3rd. Also, please note that the next Board of Trustees meeting will be this Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. As a reminder, the village election will be held on Tuesday, March 21st at St. Paul's Fieldhouse from 12 noon to 9 p.m. If you have any questions regarding the election, please contact Carol Ullman, the village clerk. The budget process is a long and tedious one. These past few months have been quite busy months for our treasurer, Irene Wu, and her staff. She has worked very closely with the village administrator, Ralph Swazi, and the department heads to bring you the budget that will be presented over the next few weeks. I would like to thank Mrs. Wu and her staff, as well as Mr. Swazi and all of the department heads. Tonight will be a work session for the Department of Public Works and Water Fund, Administration and Finance departments, and other unallocated expenses and revenues. At this time, I would like to introduce Irene Wu so that she can conduct the second budget work session. As I asked,
Mr. Mayor, can we have the Pledge of Allegiance first?
I thought it was done.
We were waiting for you, thank you.
Okay, let's keep going. Sorry, I thought you said the Pledge of Allegiance was done.
No, we'll start it now.
Very good.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have a moment of silence for all those who are in need, those who are suffering as a result of war or special intentions. And we also want to remember and pray for the brother of Karen who passed away. So we'll take a moment of silence and prayer. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Tom. At this time, I'd like to introduce Irene Wu so that she can conduct the second budget work session. And I ask that everyone hold their comments and questions until the end of the presentation. This meeting runs late and we are not able to take all of the comments. Please contact Mrs. Wu directly and she will get back to you with an answer. Mrs. Wu, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we will begin our Mr. Swazi and Superintendent of Public Works, Mr. Barone.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, trustees, members of the public. So as village administrator, the last 2.5 years, I've been preparing the budgets for DPW, the Water Enterprise Fund, and administration. Administration is my home area, so hopefully this will be the last year I have to do all three budgets. As you know, the Department of Public Works is comprises a large workforce of 79 positions. It involves engineering, sanitation, recycling, the highway division, sewers, street lighting, the central garage, which maintains approximately 250 vehicles, and many, many small pieces of equipment that are used by the parks and public works staff. For our expenses, the proposed budget is increasing by 5% from last year's adopted budget and 8% from the forecast through the end of this year, primarily due to increases in salary-related costs resulting from scheduled salary increases for our collective bargaining agreements and the expectation of filling open positions. Right now, we have 7 open positions. If you recall, at the last BOT meeting, I mentioned we were offering a job to a new engineer. So we're constantly looking to fill those positions. And the budget increase, we anticipate filling all 7 positions this year. Third-party services includes Covanta, which we have a schedule of increases going up 2% this year. Mulch removal, street lighting repair, directional drilling, rubbish removal, and recycling. The rubbish removal, we expect lower costs. The mulch removal, because we've gotten rid of a lot of our old mulch, we're only dealing with the current lighter weight stuff that we collect each year. We expect those costs to go down. And also, this last meeting, the board approved lower recycling rates by Omni. So on the 3-2 agenda. Other expenses include gas and oil and uniforms. Travel and training, I want to note that, and I'll mention this in my administration budget specifically, but I tasked Courtney Rosenblatt from our HR department with organizing all the training budgets that are active right now to look at the training dollars in the budget now that Mrs. Wu identified to me. She is talking to all the department heads and identifying which of those training dollars are allocated for training versus travel and trying to get as much training done this year. And then the training dollars, which originally were put in my administration budget, have been taken out because they belong in the departments that are using and need those dollars. And she put together a schedule of the training by employee, by department, and each department will be modifying their training schedule as needed. So I want to add $10,000 to the travel and training line for this budget, and that's for trenching and shoring, excavation, and confined space training. As I mentioned earlier, the DPW budget includes 79 full-time positions. The salary-related expenses account for 57% of the budget, and benefits of taxes are not included in numbers above. However, they're estimated to be $4.1 million. Also, I'd like to mention that I forgot to mention that the water department does report to DPW, and I do want to add $5,000 to the salary-related items. I'd like to adjust Mr. Baroni's salary as the superintendent of water reports to him, and I don't think he should make less than his superintendent, so I'd like to adjust that. That's one of the changes. On the revenue side, we have public work services. You'll notice there's a big variance here in the adopted budget versus the forecast, and then the proposed budget goes up. That's because this line includes $1.2 million of reimbursable expenses that are not occurring. I will explain that on the capital page, a little more detail, but the 1550 is for the residential reimbursables for the sidewalk schedule for the paving next year. The state aid or CHIPS program, that's a program where the state gives us money it's a community highway improvement program. It's actually 3 different piles of money. There's CHIPS itself, then there is the pave our potholes, and then there's another one called Pave New York. So all 3 of these funding sources contribute to this line item, which is called CHIPS. And we received a lot of money last year because the year before we did parking lots and they only pay us for roads. So it's going back to a more normalized $500,000 in next year's budget. Sidewalk and curb inspection. This is when LIPA and National Grid need road opening permits and such. That's what that revenue source is. And refuse services, that's the commercial garbage that we charge to pick up. Other revenues are just sewer charges and sewer rents. And that's what I have for that. The next page is capital projects. So the first one, these are the current projects. The business district repaving project. I have with me tonight a study that was done back in 2016. I'm going to send this to the board after the budget process. We did the study as a streetscape plan. It started off with a $50,000 study to basically get the business communities and residents' input on how to improve the business district and the streetscape. That evolved into a larger budget. We did this study. It came up with multiple options on new pavers, street furniture, lights, drainage, and it also includes some of the things that Chairman Kelly and the Traffic Commission are dealing with now, the elevated crosswalk tables. So it includes a lot of information. At the time, the board didn't want to go with the full rehabilitation of 7th Street and the business districts. So they put together, they allowed us to put in just the repairs. The problem with this program today is that it's pre-COVID. Prices have gone up. The pavers that were put on our streets back in 1985, 92, and 97, when they did New Hyde Park, Franklin, and 7th Street in 3 separate years. Those pavers are now custom made. They're on the way out, so you have to custom order them, which makes it difficult for the individual businesses to acquire them. So I'd like to rescope, rephase, and get new dollars and have a work session with the board to talk about before we spend any money on this. If we could just revisit this and maybe modify the study and see if we incorporate some of the things we're focused on today. So that's what that money is. That's why it wasn't spent. The 1.2 wasn't spent on the previous slide. Road pavement repairs. The remaining balance of that 1.8 million is about $1.8 million for concrete, which is going to be used down at the DPW yard as part of the tentative fire department training facility. And that's the base for everything. The sprinkler system is in design. The sewer repairs involves a new sewer main down Whitehall, the 2nd Street manhole, which had collapsed. We did a temporary repair, which is a job well done. Now it's going to be a permanent repair. The street lighting is going out to bid this week. Trustee Deegan is most familiar with these things because just about every other week or so, we must have talked about this about 30 times during the last year. That's right. So a lot of these projects are in progress. I won't go through them all unless somebody has a question about them, but they're in design, they're out to bid or awarded, and some of them are at the punch list phase. Some of the bigger projects are the DPW yard roof replacement, the fire alarm system, the DPW equipment. So the garage was just awarded a couple of meetings ago. This year's capital projects, there's less projects, but they're a large dollar value. The road and pavement repairs, I have an exhibit here just to break it down, but we have $5.8 million, 5,858 for road repairs. That includes 4 roads that we couldn't do in this year's program because of rising costs. That includes Roosevelt Street, Salisbury Avenue, Roxbury Road, and Poplar Street. It includes the anticipated repaving in kind of Stewart Avenue at $2.5 million. And includes 4 other roads, or 3 other roads we'd like to do: North Avenue, Wellington Road, and Oxford Boulevard. And then there are what we call floaters. That's about $158,000 of this. Nonetheless, it all adds up to $5,850,000. And along with that, there is $1,550,000 of sidewalk reimbursables. That's all the sidewalks that the residents will be tasked with in aggregate. Meadow Street drainage is, we've been talking about this for basically since Ida hit a couple Augusts ago. The board supported all the studies we've been doing, and this is a projection. This number includes a 20% contingency. This is to get the water off of Meadow Street faster. And the problem is that a lot of the water during very heavy rain events is coming from Nassau County Culvert. We want to disconnect from that and reconnect for it in Village of Hempstead at a lower hydraulic grade. So that's what that money's for. DPW equipment, it's the usual fare. We have a couple of 4x4 trucks with plows and sanders, a street sweeper, a Ford pickup truck we always buy a plow with it so that all these trucks we put into service during snowstorms, and also a recycling split hopper truck. All in all, it's $919,470. The ask is $489 because there's some money left over, I think, in this year's budget, about $32,000. Sewer repairs. We have, right now, we're working on, Whitehall and the second street manhole, but there's always a need for, sewer repairs. We just have to, isolate the project. So I like to keep that funded with a steady stream of money until we, get an exact number. Village curbs and sidewalks, about 160,000 of this is, village sidewalks, and about 420 would be residential. Toll house roof replacement. This is an estimate that, bless you. You know, the toll house, right now, the village, we own the toll house, and when we looked it over, myself and Mr. Giovanello, we noticed that it needs some cleaning inside. There's mildew and stuff like that. But the roof also needs to be replaced. This estimate of $70,000 is much too low. The estimate that Mr. Giovanello recently received was $185,200. So I'd like to push this out into the next year and maybe bring forward the village hall break room, which is what the employees use in the basement. It really needs major upgrades, rug, table, cabinet. So I'd like to move one out and one in, if we could. And the library generator, this is a project that has been waiting for the completion of the AOP projects. We estimate it to be about $162,000 if we do it new, but because of the AOP projects, a lot of these, which is the water department projects, a lot of the generators were undersized or at the end of their life, so they've all been replaced. So we're hoping to recycle one of the newer generators over there, either gas or diesel, because there is a main gas line down Hilton we could tap into, I think. So this, I think I covered everything on this slide. Do I have any questions on, there's a lot of numbers, the details, any questions I can answer on any of these?
Certainly. With regard to 2016 streetscape plan, if I understand correctly, there's a $3 million budget line.
The budget line, the $3 million that's in the capital plan that's been sitting there, we didn't proceed with it because we didn't have the staff. It requires a lot of inspection, and we only had 2 engineers at the time. So we postponed it. And those $3 million will all reimbursable dollars. In other words, we'll send out a letter to the businesses and we'll tell them to fix these repairs, or we will fix it. So we fund the full amount of the repair in the event no one does it on their own, so we can fix it, and then we'll charge it to their taxes. That's the $3 million for. The streetscape plan that was funded was the visioning study, and we held a couple of charrettes with business leaders and the chamber at the time and residents, and they got to talk about the current state of the business districts. And we include New Hyde Park as well, and we asked them what they'd like to see. And then the landscape architect who worked with DeBruin Engineering on this, RGR Landscaping in the city, they put together photos of current state, what could be done, options, and also gave us estimates on different treatments, depending on what type of pavers we put in, what type of furniture we put in. So what we've done in the meantime in subsequent capital programs, we put in new LED lights that you see on the street today, all the way down past the library. You see new street furniture. We got rid of the old green benches with the wooden slats that were always in need of repair. We have nice benches there. Mr. Blake has commented about the replacement of trees, and you can see they take down some of the dead trees, replace them, but they were greats and stuff. So the thing is, these are piecemeal attempts to take the business district, and really needs a major facelift.
My suggestion, however, is that I'm not sure about any of the other trustees, but I have never seen this plan.
No, it's never been. I had to dig into the archives, and I've saved it just for
So
tonight.
my suggestion is to remove that line and then address it when the new administration comes in, so that we can either upgrade that plan or determine what the true needs actually are.
I'll ask Mrs. Buda just chime in on that, because I think the money's already allocated. $3 million is already in past budgets. It's been approved, so I don't think we need to take. It's not a new request. What I'm saying is I'd like to pause on it, bring it back to the board, and say, hey, before we go back and try to, because even if the businesses were successful in ordering these pavers and put them out there, you're going to have a mismatch you're not gonna like what you see with the old pavers, which are 30 years old, and the new pavers. Some of the old pavers may crumble when you lift them up, and then you still have to deal with the street grade. So the plan includes things like raised planting beds with new plantings, irrigation, basically covers the roots of the trees, new street furniture, bicycle racks, new pavers like they have in Times Square, 12 by 24, less seams, easier to maintain, better quality materials than these old, pavers.
So I can criticize Bill Kuhl about picking those pavers when I was a trustee in 97.
Well, they were the state of the art then, so the thing is, they don't, the thing is, when we talked about this with the former board, when this first came up, the former boards, one of the plans was, does the village paid for it last time, does the village pay for it again? Do we assess the business districts based on their evaluations? So Leo's wouldn't pay the same share as the Albanese group down on Franklin. What I'm proposing is looking at 7th Street alone, which is really the hub of the business district and the heart of the village activity, and then phase in New Hyde Park and Franklin, which have different needs and have different pedestrian traffic patterns.
And Ralph's looking at, for example, 7th Street now, right? I think some of what you might be presenting are nice to haves instead of musts right now. So I would recommend you put together what the musts are. So for example, planting a tree where they're down, I think that's important to do for the beauty of I think the main thing on 7th Street is to keep it clean at this point. And other than some of the recommendations from the traffic committee for safety, that should be incorporated. But I think you should relook at that, because even if we have the money allocated, I'm not sure this is the time that we have to spend it. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, we do have conditions in the streets that we need to deal with. You know, there are trip hazards on our own because of our trees, and there are some in the sidewalk areas. Some of the conditions have changed too. We have had new business come in, have redone some of their, so even the numbers wouldn't tie out today. We'd have to relook at it again. So
The trip hazard, I agree with. I mean, you got to,
so what I like to do is just the money's there, how we spend it. Do we want to make it a bigger project that deals with more of the issues that are in our orbit today versus just focus on what we had planned to do 3 or 4 years ago, almost 7 years ago. So I think the board should take a breath and just look at it. We can always execute what we have. We might need more money. It depends on which businesses cooperate, which ones don't.
Ralph, why don't we table it? Let's get a look at the plan. Let's see what it looks like. Let's dip it between what you had 7 years ago versus now, because I'm assuming you're right that costs have gone up. So what we want to do may be different from now, but I agree with you completely. I mean, 7th Street's the face of the village, and right now the face is looking a little bit worn and tired, and we need to upgrade it.
And by the way, Deputy Mayor, just so you know that Mr. Barone and I, we are right on top of it. And Mr. Blake, I talked to him today. Even Mr. Gordon, who works for Mr. Blake, we're going to take a walk down 7th Street as a group, like a little task force, and look at what we can contribute besides trees. We are cleaning it more aggressively.
Good.
At the end of the summer last year. We haven't had any complaints at all. I hope.
Yeah, those are the biggest complaints I got, and I got a lot of them. But I think after you start the cleanup after the Pomerods thing, how do you pronounce it? After the closures, for the promenades.
So we are. We're
once we attack that, it's I'm not getting those complaints anymore. Just thank yous.
We're not neglecting the small things that have to be done. We're just saying that.
Yeah, I understand.
They're all little different band-aids and patches to a bigger issue you might want to look at, because you can always do less, but I can't do more without the go-ahead from the board.
Yeah, right.
I'd just like to add that the original scope of that project was solely just to remove and reset the existing paver that was out there.
Okay.
So, I think by spending money at 7th Street for beautification project could be money better spent than just removing and resetting what's existing and what's already outdated.
Okay, so if we're asking questions now, your public works number, Ralph, just clarification here, it's 1550, and you said 1.2, that is the residential reimbursements, right? So people that they have to do their sidewalks and it's getting reimbursed on?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the 1.2
is residential reimbursements, you said.
Did I misplaced that page? I have the paper, I'm sorry. The 1.2. Yeah, 1.2. So the difference between the adopted budget and the forecast is about 1.2 different. That's what I was just saying. That's why the forecast is low. We didn't do the work and we didn't get reimbursements.
But can I ask a question? On the actuals in 2021 and 22 was 200 grand. Did we just not do any of it that year because of COVID, for example?
No, and the actual for 2022 was money that was spent. It was the 22, 23 where we didn't act on we planned on during last year's budget. We planned on moving on this, but we also still had trouble. Again, I want to refer to Trustee Deegan. We had 65 projects and 2 engineers. We didn't have an inspector. There was no list from civil service. There is one now. I've confirmed with Ms. Rosenblatt. So we're trying to hire the inspector. Without the inspector out there inspecting every day, you don't get the work product.
We didn't get the people to do it.
Right.
Okay.
We have a
That makes sense.
standard. Even these people who do their work now, we have a standard that we put out. You know what the sub base is and what type of paver. So and adding conduit. So we make sure that they do it our way. So it
Okay.
comes out.
Believe also the 1.2 is expected revenue from Franklin Avenue from the removing and resetting of the pavers. Am I right, Irene?
I think it was Franklin.
The 1.2 million reimbursement was for the business district paving program, the one we were just discussing.
Okay.
So of the $3 million, 1.2 million was expected to be done year one. And that amount was supposed to be reimbursed to the village.
Okay.
Because the project was deferred, the village did not receive the revenue for that.
Right, the entire 3 million was supposed to be phased out over 3 phases. Franklin
Was
Avenue,
all of it
7th
to be
Street.
reimbursed by the businesses? Is that what we're saying?
Correct, most
And
of
do
it.
they have to agree to that or is it a law?
It is the abutting property owner's responsibility to
Sorry?
maintain. It's the abutting owners. It is the abutting property owner's responsibility to maintain their sidewalks.
It's our law.
Okay,
It's
so
in the
we would get
code.
reimbursed. So you're gonna put the plan together so we could look at it.
But it was put on hold because of COVID.
Well, we right around then is when we lost
Yeah.
an engineer and our inspector,
Yeah.
and we lost 4 members of the engineering department of the DPW.
I have a question on the revenue side, right? On the money that comes in from the work being done on Stewart Avenue, does that have any impact on all this work going on in Washington Avenue that, are we getting more revenue that might not be
No,
in this budget?
Well, we probably have road opening permits for the work going on Stewart. On Washington, that's a county road, so they would get the
Okay.
road. So that's related to that Y-49 cable coming out of Westchester to Fort Washington.
Mhm.
It ends up in Garden City, just opposite Roosevelt Field, back entrance. That's I think they're replacing the cable in parts, and these vaults they're putting out over by Coventry and Devereaux.
Yeah.
That's a vault that they need, so if they ever need to repair it, they can pull through at these different points. I think Washington's another point, so they don't have to, trench the whole area.
Did they give you an estimate of whenever I know in like by Stewart School, it's going on for a long time now.
So the one by Devereaux and Coventry was the 3-phase project. I talked to them last year because I told them we were paving, and they assured me it'd be done this spring, the 3rd phase. So I expect it to conclude later this month or early April, which is way ahead of our paving schedule. That's why we didn't attempt to do Stewart last year because of this. And Stewart, by the way, I don't want to mix meetings here, but Chairman Kelly and the Traffic Commission are receiving a study. The way Stewart was planned is to, fix the concrete curbs, the aprons and the sidewalks as we do at any road we do on both sides, the mall side and the residential sides, and then mill the road and do any base repair that's needed, which is the road, and then put the new asphalt coating on top. We project that to be about $2.5 million. But there was a traffic commission discussion that occurred a few weeks ago, which prompted the idea that when the road's repaved, you may want to consider, and I don't think the decision's been made yet, do we want to repave, do we want to repaint it the same way? So we won't change any widths or anything, but we could repaint the lines or parking or turning lanes if that's be considered. And we have plenty of time to do that, but so we can leave Stewart Avenue in the budget and maybe pursue that study if the traffic commission approves it and wants to move it on to the board level, or we could just go ahead with as it is in kind. But if we want to pause a little longer, we can kick Stewart into next year you do it in 24, 25. But it's, they're planning for this year, but it is flexible enough to move around.
Ralph, on the sidewalk and curb inspections, right? That's revenue that's coming into us, correct?
Yes, that it's on the revenue page. It's from LIPA, National Grid. I can't think of anywhere else that rips up our roads, but it could be also
Yeah.
permits for lead service lines, but we've actually,
So it's all permits.
so, yes.
Okay. And do they owe us any money at this point? That's what I was trying to get at.
No, no one.
Okay.
We,
Because I noticed you're lowering the number a lot. So they're paying?
yeah,
They're paying on time?
Yeah, we won't issue a permit until we have the funds,
Okay,
check
good.
in hand.
There's a check, and it goes out the same day.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I have one question, the DPW equipment purchase of the recycling split hopper truck, and you know, I'm asking recycling cardboard. We're continuing to struggling with how we could have a cardboard pickup because it's highly recyclable. And I know part of the problem is the size of the two compartments in the trucks we have. Will this help in any way with that?
I believe the truck they're talking about is the same style we have today. Now, I know why I asked the question. I know where you're going with it. If we want to introduce, in Glen Cove, we have recycling truck that's separate from the sanitation pickups, but requires another 3-man crew. So this is as much a manpower issue as a equipment issue. We could add, to pick up cardboard separately, you need another truck, another crew to pick up cardboard. The other truck, because still picking up paper and bottles on the other truck. There's no 3-hopper truck. So you either have to go to a single hopper truck like the garbage trucks, but just for recycling. It's
Okay,
just
well,
way
we had a whole discussion on this, and I think we came in with, it may not be a manpower, it may be a scheduling and particular problem with the commercial recyclables not fitting into that size. So we can have that discussion another time, but I thought maybe that was being considered
Yeah,
with
so-
this purchase.
So it's an expensive truck. It's a little more expensive than the ordinary garbage truck. So it's almost, I think it's like scheduled here. It's a $449,000 truck versus the garbage truck is like maybe $250. So it's almost double the price. So we don't have to. If you okay this tonight or on the 3rd, we can still change it. We don't have to make the purchase, just a funding request. And so we could just leave it there for a recycling truck or trucks and not commit to that type of truck. It's just it's a funding ask for something, but we do need to replace the truck or truck.
One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting, Trustee Chester is attending an important meeting, Nassau County Village officials, regarding the Hochul Housing Compact, and that's why he's not here tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions on DPW?
He's here in spirit. I do, yeah. What would it be without me asking questions, right?
No.
Yeah. The, on the sidewalk repairs, reimbursable, those are from the residents, correct?
Yes.
Right, Ralph? And,
We have our own sidewalks we repair.
Right.
But the majority of them are based on the road programs we do. So each road has a different length and has different damage profiles. So the engineers go out there. We actually have LKMA doing it right now for us,
Okay.
so we can move along. They go out there and they look at all trip hazards, cracks, ponding issues, anything that's not ADA compliant, and mark it up. And then we send it to the residents because we charge the residents, much to their chagrin,
Right.
for these repairs, and go back and forth with quite a few of them throughout this process. They have 30 days to get it fixed themselves, or we will do it when we put the road contract out there. So we might not get to it for 60 or 90 days, depending on which road it is,
right.
but we will go and do the repairs and send the bill to the homeowner.
Are many people in the rears on that, or are we up to date on collections, just out of curiosity?
It goes in the taxes automatically, so we're never in arrears
Oh, okay.
officially.
Okay,
They don't have to pay, but that's the way the law is set up, and that's the way we execute.
okay. On the sewer repairs, are those for sewer caps, or is it actually the sewers themselves?
It's a combination of, there's sewer repairs and there's sewer pump replacements. So the sewer repairs are basically, like on Whitehall Street, we have the sewers made of, I think it's clay, right? And we had a major break about 4 years ago. It cost about $250,000 to replace about 30 feet of sewer.
Well,
So we're using these funds. We have Nelson Pope doing a study now to replace the entire main. And by the way, it's very, very deep too. It goes from high to low, right down as it goes south. Because our sewer collection system is on the southern end of the town, where it goes into the pumping stations and it goes into a forced main to the county system, Cedar Creek. So we're trying to avoid a break like that. And Whitehall is a very old and very heavily used sewer main. So some of the options, they'll come up with options for us. It could be replacement main in kind, not in kind, we'll put steel. It could be, if the condition of the clay is okay, we can line it with a, like a liner, and then they heat it up and it becomes like an inner liner. It just takes up a little bit of the circumference. That's a way of extending the life of main without replacing the whole thing. But you know, we had a major collapse there. We had a couple of collapses there, so that's why we're concentrating on Whitehall.
yeah, that's fine. I was just curious. And one other question on the Meadow Street drainage, will the county, because we're going to cut them off, it sounds like, right? The county's
No, the county's not using our street to dump their water intentionally. There's water that's coming down this culvert, goes as far north as the expressway.
Right.
I'm not sure where it extends beyond that, but we had LKMA do a complete analysis. That
Right.
was one of the studies this board funded.
yes,
The water that comes down, that culvert assists us in probably 98% of the rain events. But those ones that are intense, that flood in people's houses and
Right.
garages, we can't get the water off the street enough because their culvert backs up into our streets. And all the water comes from Grove and Clinton. It moves in toward Tremont and College, right? And then it comes south.
right,
There's no way for it to go, but to accumulate. So what we're proposing is detaching from the culvert up in the northeast quadrant of that section and reattaching it on the south side of Meadow Street over by College Place, going through there with a 30-inch pipe, cutting across a small property in West Hempstead, which I believe is, they seem to be okay with an easement, and then attached to the culvert, maybe 30 feet from where it goes open air in the village of Hempstead, and then it goes to Hempstead Lake. So we also do have, that'll take care of about 85% of the problem, the volume. We also do plan on, as we resurface roads north of Meadow Street, to add additional drainage structures to reduce the flow that's coming down. So that's a longer term plan, but the big problem is this culvert.
yeah. I was just wondering if the county will contribute to the costs associated with it. Okay.
We'll probably have to pay their permit fee too.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the water department then. What page is that? Everything's the same. Okay, water department is an enterprise fund. It's the proposed budget is increasing by 23% from the forecast and 17% from the adopted budget, mostly due to increases in band interest. The interest on the bands is going up $1 million. And depreciation as a result of the completion of the water tank and well treatment projects. So the depreciation has been calculated based on the value of these projects. Even the fact that part of the funding for the AOPs is coming from state grants, we still have to depreciate the full value of the investment. And because the projects were not completed in prior years, we never obtained the full costs. But this year, we anticipate all the AOPs being online. The water tank, as you know, went online last year. So we expect full depreciation cost about $2.2 million. We also have, we have a decrease in contractual services. You know, the lead issue really caught us by surprise in 21. And we spent a lot of money working on our own to resolve and identify. And then the county, when they finally stepped in, gave us additional things to do. And then we had the lead and copper rule failure, which we're in the midst of right now. We had the orthophosphate. So, but we do expect the consulting fees associated with all this, the blue water and the brown water, to go down because of the orthophosphate treatment now. Our brown water complaints have gone to nil. The one we had was actually their own hot water heater. So
that's good.
There's 19 positions in water. I just want to point out a couple of things. In other expenses, you know, about 3 or 4 years ago, I added a contingency account to the water department of $150,000. I raised that by $25,000 this year, just because so many unexpected things happen in water. I just wanted to create a little more buffer for that. Also, in the salaries, we had, we budgeted the superintendent salary at 135 last year, but we just awarded at 165. And we also have the collective bargaining agreement increases there. In the materials and supplies, we'll be using at least 5 peroxide refills now instead of the 2 or 3 we're using. We'll have a lot more peroxide being used for AOP. We have UV bulbs that probably need replacement, and we also have orthophosphate treatment. That will be reduced once we get the full lining in the pipes, and it'll be in a maintenance mode, so that expense will go down. But but right now it's kind of hard to measure because we're in the midst of it.
Quick question, Ralph.
Yes, sir.
With the award that we're getting.
Questions, I told you that.
I know. Oh, should I hold my question?
No.
Oh. With the award we're getting from, the state, that'll, I understand, lower our bond
Right.
quite a bit.
So the bands, and Irene's right next to me, but the bands are to help us fund what we're doing now. Once we finalize these budgets, we have the final cost, then she can issue the bonds and the grants. Like I said, the grants we already have the amounts for those. We haven't received them all yet, but they're covering about 50.7% of the full cost. So
I think a
probably
roundabout number, Irene, is like 50, maybe down to 25 million. Is that right? About right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
We're getting about 25.7 million from New York State.
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks, Ralph. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, and the bottom one, the transfer to insurance reserve, all funds contribute to the general liability and workers' compensation insurance fund. So that's that expense. On the revenue side, so water sales are a tricky business because it's the summer months are just like electricity is air conditioning driven for LIPA in the summer. Our water usage is where we get most of our revenue. If we have a hot summer, we have more sales. If we have a wet summer, we have less sales. The way I calculate this $6,108,000 is I take the last 3 years and I average them based on the actuals. I usually, when I do the budget, I have the actuals through January. I might have sneaked February, and I'm not sure. I think I got January. And then I take the 3 years for the last 4 months from going back 4 years, 3 years and 2 years, because the current year isn't actual yet. And so this is formula driven. The thing is, it doesn't include any water rate increase. In the old days, I would have come to you and said, we need to raise rates to make up this revenue shortfall, but we have a surplus in water that backs this up. So I don't feel it's necessary. We're not raising rates. We didn't raise them last year. So that's why it's a little short. Irene can explain the premium securities.
Okay. When we issued our bans this year in February, we were given premium we were offered premium. That's which causes our true interest costs to be reduced. It's a high interest rate, but then with the premium, it reduces our interest rate. So our premium that was received this year was higher than the prior year, and that goes to offset the increase in the ban interest as well. So it's almost offsetting.
Great, thank you.
The hybrid rentals are basically the charge to the fire department for rental hydrants for their water usage.
So the fire department pays the village, is that how it goes?
Yes.
Okay,
If they didn't, we'd have to make it up in the budget.
I see.
You know, they love paying it too. They tell me every year.
Yeah, I see the chief down there smiling. He's happy about it.
And then we have penalties and service charges like the one we've been talking about.
Okay.
As far as the 5-year capital plan, water main improvements, we anticipate doing a water main that goes from Osborne to Commercial, which has to go underneath the railroad tracks. There's a 4-inch main there. We're upgrading it to 12, I believe. And we're also replacing a main including a valve from Clinton along the northern edge of Stewart to the back of Roosevelt Field. where it interconnects with Hempstead. And a portion of this main will be paid for by the 555 people for their acreage in front. I forget the distance, it might be 175 feet or 200 feet, but they'll be paying for that. That was part of the water availability agreement. There is when we do water mains, we burden the water main project with the repaving of the road that we tear up during the project. And the water main project here did Grove Street, Commander Lindbergh, and Meadow Street, which is about a mile long. And Meadow Street's about 10 to 15 feet wider than roads like Pine, other streets in that area. So and also Meadow Street has, on the portion west of Clinton, there's some concrete slabs by the train trestle. To replace that as concrete would be more than $500,000. Just rip up the concrete and put asphalt there is going to be about $500,000. So I need about $1.6 million added to this water main improvement area just for the resurfacing of Meadow Street, Commander, Grove Street, and Lindbergh. If we do it in 1 year, which is what I'd like to do. The equipment is my Exhibit C, which is it's basically a new flusher truck. You know, the truck we have now is old, and so that I talked. You know, when I make these requests, I did talk to the vacuum truck. It's $575,000, and then we have a new Explorer with also again with the plow and lift gate. We put plows on all our vehicles for snowstorms. And chemical pumps. Each of the well sites there's 10 wells, 9 of which can operate concurrently. 15 and 16 have to run separately because of their proximity to each other. But we try to replace the pumps as they age to keep on top. So $21,000 is a small investment, but it's I think after this next year we will replace all of them in the last 3 years. I'm not sure what the $5,000 is for next year, but we'll review it next year. Can I answer any questions on water?
Yeah, Ralph, on the 575 for the vehicle, when were you planning on purchasing that? And can you describe the vehicle, that truck, a little bit better? Oh, no, I thought it was plus a Ford Explorer.
The Ford Explorer is $80,000. The vacuum truck is $575, so I'm asking for $655.
So it's $8K for the Ford Explorer.
Yes, the vacuum truck.
And what is explain the vacuum truck?
Before I do it wrong, you want to try to do it right?
The vacuum truck is a critical piece of equipment that's used for sewer maintenance. Actually, before they send the flush down, as they pull back, they suck out the sewer, and to ensure that that debris does not go further down the line and cause blockages.
Is that the one we see going along the curbs? With the tube coming out of the truck?
Very similar, but different piece of equipment. That is also a vac truck, but it's for drainage.
Yeah. Oh, you're going down to the sewer with
That's for catch
Correct.
basins. The other one's for catch basins.
And do we have one now or no?
We do have a vac truck for our catch basins, and we do have a vac truck in the sewer department that needs to be replaced.
Oh, so it needs to be replaced.
Yes.
County supervisors.
I'm sorry, Ralph?
When I do the capital budget, I sit down with the supervisors, the people who use the equipment, who manage the equipment, and he said our vac truck needs to be replaced.
All right, so we're looking to replace that this year coming up.
Yes, it's going to have a lead time too. So it's not like I can go to the dealership and pick it up. It's going to probably take 12 to 15 months, maybe longer to get it.
Okay. And the Ford Explorer, the 8K, you're looking for this year too?
Yes, we had a van that we're transferring over to Mr. Blake's area. He could use it. We're not sure exactly why it was purchased for the water department.
Okay.
The guys didn't choose it, but when it came to them, they used it. But Mr. Blake made better use of it. So we're transferring to his department where it'll be used properly, and we're just getting it.
Okay. So we'll still get you set of the van. All right, thank you.
Yeah, we wouldn't, if we, we would just keep it there, but the water department's needs are different. And, like I said, the worst we would do is auction it off.
Right. And you're gonna put a plow on the Ford Explorer?
We put plows on all trucks because There are some storms you want to put as many trucks out as possible,
Yeah.
30, 40, even 50 trucks at times.
The water department assists with snow removal in parking lots, which is
Right.
why
Right.
they
Thank
pick up
you.
with the plow.
Very good.
This year.
Yeah, this year we have some savings, by the way. And
Yeah, right.
I think I didn't point that out, but we have some savings on.
I saw that. I was
DPW.
waiting for you to point that out, but it's.
Yeah, we had $160,000. By the way, I should
Oh,
mention
boy,
it since
thank
it came up. We had about $160,000 in there this year, which any work that's associated with snow goes into that particular line. There's no manpower in that budget line. And that's based on a 3-year average. Because of the light snow this year, I left 50,000 here because when we did the budget, we still had a couple months left. So I left 50,000 in there for snow removal. But I left the number at 160 this year because I didn't want to average in this year and lower too much for next
Sure,
year.
yeah.
So I left it the same on the last 3 years.
And that includes sand. We did some sanding and.
We do sanding on some of the hilly areas, which really over by the Waterworks building.
Yeah,
there,
right.
Fifth name of the street.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Up where Mr. DeMille lives,
Right, right. DeMille Hill.
Mill Hill.
Ralph, you mentioned a $1.6 million number in connection with Meadow Street, Grove, and Lindbergh.
Yes.
I didn't
Meadows-
follow that. Could you clarify that?
So when we do a water main, we rip up the road and we repave it from the water main project versus the road project. And Meadow Street is a very long road and it's a very wide road. And it also, the project included Grove and Lindbergh and Commander. In fact, if you go down Lindbergh and Commander, you'll see like this double loop in there because the way we had to do it. So repaving these roads, the Meadow Street alone is like $1.3 million, about $500,000 that. It's a little more extraordinary because over by the trestle, you have concrete and asphalt that's been damaged and repaired. We can't leave it that way. We have to either go to concrete, which is more expensive, or with the concrete panels and go to asphalt, which is less expensive. Grove Street's about $275. Commander's 41 and Lindbergh's 30. So they all add up to 1.651. So it has to be in the road program, but it's the water program that really we fund this through. So I'd like to add that there. And we have about, since I don't know the cost of the 2 water mains I mentioned, and we do have about $900,000, I think, left in the fund from last year. We have about 3.5. If before I added the 1.6 in just now, we would have had about 3.5 in there. That should be enough to do the Clinton main, which is 4 inches, and the Stewart main, which is about 8 inches. And by the way, these are important upgrades because, if you have, even though 555 Stewart doesn't get its water from this main, we have pressure issues because that size of that main. We have fire safety issues could be developed. When Clinton came down, we had to rely on the town of Hempstead interconnect for supply. So these main upgrades are very important. I don't know how much of that money, the $3.5 million, will be left to help us with paving over here. So I'd like to ask for the full complement, and it just rolls into the next sewer main project, water main project, sorry, the difference in sewer mains.
Thank you.
Did the capital. All right, so that concludes water unless any other question. Administration, my home budget. So administration includes village clerk, it includes Ryan in the IT department, includes Courtney in the HR area, includes the village historian elections. The board of trustees have a small balance in there if they want to do anything. So this year, the budget is proposed is increasing by 7% from the forecast and 12% from last year's adopted budget, mostly due to scheduled increases in salaries and increases to maintenance of software expenses. I want to mention that, Ryan came into an existing network that grew apart. We've all seen the way technology grows and expands. It started with email and a couple of servers, and all of a sudden you have, and the police department has heavy technology, which is outside of this budget. But nonetheless, the entire network is a labyrinth of switches and communication devices and firewalls, firewall appliances. So, and there's software licenses that go with this. So there's an increase. We want to really increase the IT equipment budget and firewall appliances and Ethernet switches. So that's an increase in there. IT services, including consultant fees. We pay to Total Technology Solutions. They've been bought out by a company named SourcePass. We will be going out for an RFP again next year. We're at the 5-year mark now with them. They've done a great job for us. We have the same team in place. So this also includes payroll services for ADP, publicity, and FBS services as well. The village courts in here as well, I might add. This 12 full-time positions in admin does include benefits and taxes, which are about $510,000. FBS services, that's the services it's going down by $20,000. We have a reduction in consultant fees of $5,000. That's a change to this budget. So the 536 in third-party services will come down to 531. Courtney is bringing something in-house, so we reduce the consultant fees there. I'm also moving Ryan up to IT Specialist 3. He came in as IT Specialist 2. Mark will replace as IT Specialist 3. The demands, the technical work he's doing belongs in the IT Specialist 3 spot. I was going to add a IT aide full-time position here, out of respect to the budget process and the taxes. I gave him a part-time salary of $15,000. That would give somebody a $15 an hour wage for 20 hours a week for 50 weeks of the year. If he wants to fill, he also has 12 hours a week from SourcePass of IT presence. So at some point, Ryan could convert that resource to a full-time employee when he feels comfortable doing so, either this year, part through the year, or next year. And we also have IT overtime. Ryan is here at night for EAB meetings, our meetings, so that budget went up a bit this year. Administration capital, Karen is working on the scanning project. Last year, Karen also absorbed, since we lost the people who were doing the scanning project, DPW, she took that over as the records keeper. She's doing both DPW and admin. So we have $100,000 in there for the out year, 24-25, and I think she has a 161 left in the current budget. So she's working on that. She always has someone in here going through the records. Data processing technology. This is for upgrades of outdated equipment to standardize on a common technology platform. This will enhance connectivity, security, and maintenance across the network. The existing capital projects, we have a computer room renovation. The computer room used to be in the office where Irene sits on the first floor. Some years ago, before I got here, they moved it downstairs into the basement, and traversing the ceiling are water pipes. And we've had leaks there. We've had to worry about the equipment. So we want to move the equipment into a room without any water pipes overhead. The thing is, though, we've been revisiting the scope of the work. So this is on pause right now. I think we still have enough money. We might even need less if we're lucky.
Ralph, are we looking at a cooling system for the equipment as well? Will there be
I'm
proper?
sorry, sir?
With equipment, you need the proper cooling. Will we have the
It'll
proper?
have new air conditioning.
Okay.
It's new wiring, new air conditioning, color coded, labeled.
Okay, good.
We probably don't need the raised anti-static floor. So we're going to change the scope of the work, and we think, and also we're probably not going to drag all the computer lines. We're probably going to go with a fiber optic strand with redundancy. So we'll put boxes like on the first floor. We'll have a box with all the connections. We'll have a strand going down to one line. So it'll be a lot less labor involved.
We're contemplating all on-prem servers, on-prem machines and things like that. I'm looking at Ryan because he probably knows better.
We've been putting a lot of servers in the cloud. Okay. We do have some on-premise though.
Yes, we've been slowly trying to move stuff off-premise as much as possible each year.
Okay. So then your question here on the standardization of data processing technology, the 132,000 above, what does that mean exactly, standardize the technology?
So there's some of the switches, and well, he could probably explain it better because he had made the request, but we have the equipment that was put in there probably doesn't match, not the same standards. So you can't monitor it remotely. In some cases, they don't communicate well together. So he's trying to improve connectivity, connect time, cybersecurity, and just standardize, like, I think, well, what is it? It's Cisco and Meraki.
Yeah, we're currently Cisco Meraki. We're looking to go to another Cisco product.
I have an exhibit for it.
Like,
I don't know the details.
Don't worry about giving now, but let's talk later about, let's see what we're trying to do, because, I mean, one of the other questions you could have is depending on how you do it, if you go with like a blade setup, maybe it's even more efficient for us from a functionality standpoint. It makes it easier to upgrade and things like that. So.
Yeah, we don't have that right now. We have a bunch of several-year-old equipment. Some stuff dates back almost 20 years now that we're using network equipment.
Let's take a look at what we got and see if there's something we can do to it. Okay.
The thing is, it's, you know, like I said, it grew up between the computer on premises and the police cars, the IT guy that, Mark, who used to be here before Ryan, built this thing, managed this thing, but the efficiency and stuff like this, it worked, but it's not the way you want it now. So that's what this is all about.
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, things have moved quite a bit, right? And it continues to evolve. But just want to make sure that we're good today and maybe 5 years from now, right? Beyond that, you can't plan for. So.
Also, the last capital project is the office construction. You know, we're not in the first floor. This is nearing completion. We expect about 2 more weeks of air conditioning work and testing. Then the construction crew will come back in and finish the wiring change order you already approved, put the ceiling up and the LED lights, finish the floor and put rugs down, and then we'll bring the furniture in. We hope to be in there. Giuseppe will probably kill me for this, but I think hopefully late April, early May.
I have a quick question going back one step. You mentioned redundancy, right? So God forbid we have a blackout on there where we need redundancy and backup. Do we have that in place right now? And
So we
also,
have
one other question, Ralph. Do we test it? It's so important to test it to make sure we're ready to move quickly if there is an emergency.
I think we've tested it real time when we had a server fail, but I don't think we have regular testing. We could add that into our.
I would just test it now and then make
So
sure.
the redundancy we have, the redundancy I'm talking about here is if you go to the fiber optic strand, it's just one line that carries all that information. We want to have a second strand in case something compromised the first one. So that's redundancy on the communication between the floors. Then we have data devices which back up all of our servers. So every server we have here is backed up once an hour. So if there's a failure, we can go back. Go back up to 60 minutes, depending on where the failure occurs. It could be 5 minutes after the hour, or the full 59 minutes. But we have that. We also have we can virtualize a lot of stuff. So all the security patches and stuff are done offline. We don't have to worry about that stuff. We're trying to increase reliability and reduce the maintenance of this large network.
Right. But to Tom's comment, do we also then, I mean, I like the idea we're backing up. I like the hourly snapshot. That's great. Do we also do a remote backup in the event there's a problem here?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering also.
That the devices are remote. The data devices, right? They're remote to data device, aren't they?
Yeah, I can clear that up a little bit. So we have a data service that has a server downstairs that captures backups every hour. And those backups are actually backed up to an off-site location.
That's all right.
And if there's a problem, a hardware failure, whatever, we would go in, we would actually remotely boot up that server, that backup. Then we would run off of that until we get the server back here online. So to produce,
we have run off.
That was my next question was from where Tom was going, again, it's outside the scope of this meeting, but we test that on a regular basis? I know you said we tested it, but was the last time we tested it in 2020 and we haven't tested it in 3 years? It's a silly example, but.
We've actually had a few times this year. We've actually had to remotely mount a server due to complications with servers on premise here. Or if we had to grab a file or something, we would pretty much go through the same process. So it is successful. We've definitely done it a few times this year, and pretty sure when the images are captured that they're probably verified. I could also verify that for the board. But so far everything has been perfect with our vendor.
Yeah, I had a client, big healthcare client on Water Street, and when it got flooded, I guess that was Katrina, right? Their backup was a block away, and that got flooded. They were out of business for a while. So it's important also, you don't have to announce publicly where our backups are, but the backups should not be in the vicinity of our building here.
Are they?
I came from a large corporate.
So you know, yeah. Well, you used to be in
Correct.
technology, so you know.
They used to back up the Sydney service in Arizona. There wasn't, nothing was on premise.
So to finish his question, it's a geographically remote, the backup?
Yes, I believe there's a backup on the West Coast and the East Coast.
Cool.
This
Look,
is,
look, sorry, all you know, Tom said, I mean, in our industry, one of our bigger providers had a cyber attack 3 weeks ago. It's making us relook at everything that we
Yeah.
do. And it's gonna change a lot of things we do because of the concerns around it. So just be careful.
Understood. I've looked at a couple of disaster recovery plans that have made it to my emails this year, just to make sure that I have everything in mind.
if you want to be consultant on what we plan, we'll certainly meet with you.
Let's take it offline and talk about it, just to
But
make sure we're good.
This is why we brought in a big IT partner. We had a one-man show here who did a great job, but it was always, running around fixing this and doing that.
No, I
and-
know,
and
Band-Aids,
planning-
yeah.
Planning was lacking. Now we have cybersecurity, we have help desk, we have virus scan on board, we have inventory of our machines and when to replace them. We have data devices. It's been a tremendous, but even still, with all the work we put into it, Ryan is finding that there's more we can do, and that's what the consultant he's working.
Right.
All right,
Thank you very much.
That's it for my areas.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Good job. Thanks, Ralph.
So we'll continue tonight. I'll first discuss the finance department. So the 23-24 proposed budget for the finance department of $1.3 million includes the purchasing department, tax department, the assessor's office, audit and compliance, all aspects of accounts payable for the village, as well as all accounts receivable. All the finance department employees interact with village residents, trustees, all the department heads and staff, as well as vendors and various government organizations, New York State, the federal government. The budget is increasing about 5% year over year, and this is mostly as a result of the contractual salary increases per the CBA agreements. Under third-party services, this includes fees for our independent auditors who perform our yearly annual audit, as well as our annual deferred compensation audit. We also have fees for a vendor who produces our claims and payroll audits. We also pay for a fiscal advisor who assists us with the annual required SEC disclosures, continuing disclosures. We also engage actuarial services for our required reporting on our financial statements every year. And we also include the fees for the village assessor here. Under maintenance of software, the finance department utilizes about 8 different systems or programs. Obviously, the vast majority of this cost goes to our general ledger vendor, but we also utilize the tax billing and assessment system. We also just recently rolled out to the department heads a budgeting software, which helped improve our budgeting this year vastly. We went from Excel templates to now an online program, which helped us consolidate all the budgets for the operating budgets for the village. Next year, we hope to also incorporate the capital plan as well. We also have, we have about 8 different programs. We have required reporting to New York State for dog licenses. We have various permits that we issued in the village. So we have a lot of niche systems that we utilize. So this accounts for that cost. The finance department is comprised of about 11 full-time employees. Benefits and taxes are not included in this number, but is estimated to be about $477,000. For capital projects, we do not have a request for the 23-24 fiscal year. In fact, we don't have any requests in the next few years, but in the 5-year plan, we do hope to, in the near future, upgrade our general ledger system. We are currently undergoing upgrades to a lot of our systems. The tax billing and assessment system is a major system that we're working on upgrading. That system is 20+ years old. And of course, it houses such critical information, which is the village taxes and assessments for all properties. So we are utilizing Tyler Systems, which is the same company that the building department and DPW department utilize. We're trying to get uniformity, so we are able to speak to each other in terms of getting information. We're also working on upgrading our water billing system, and we just completed an upgrade of the gas pump allocation cost system. So DPW was heavily involved with that. Mr. Swazi and the staff in DPW assisted us. So every vehicle in the village that utilizes the gas pumps is assigned a key fob, and those costs are automatically assigned to their departments. So that helps us with our reporting as well. So those are the capital projects for the finance department. Any questions?
Starting off with, how many of the programs are legacy programs that may not continue in the future?
Yes, good question. Our tax billing and assessment system was a home built, program by the person that also wrote a couple of other programs for the village. We subsequently moved out of those systems, but we still are utilizing the tax billing and assessment system. So that's why we're working to upgrade to the Tyler system, because that system is no longer supported. So that's an issue. Our permit system was also provided by this one individual, but it was purchased by our GL system vendor. So they're helping us maintain that system.
I'll build on Trustee Trino's question. Have we ever benchmarked ourselves against another town, another village like us, to see, are we using, where are we on the maturity curve as far as what we're using? Are we early, late, middle? Have we ever done that?
Benchmarking against other municipalities, we do speak to other municipalities in conferences and events that we run into them. And in the corporate world, I come from the corporate world, we're constantly upgrading systems, but that's not a priority in the municipal world. Tax dollars are better spent paving roads or, upgrading building improvements. Systems typically take a back seat, as Ryan will tell you, right? He joined and, we don't really invest in technology or systems.
But do we have a view, like your comment about some guy wrote this, and I mean, I love entrepreneurs, but it scares the daylights out of me in terms of supporting it. So have you ever done like an inventory to say, okay, this is stuff we have that's kind of provided by a main provider like these guys at Tyler? I'm not familiar with them, but I'm assuming they're big in the space. What we have that's homegrown. And then second question would be, do we have an idea of where these are in terms of like, are any of them near like end of life? Because I know even in my company, we're having that issue now where we have some long dated applications that have been there forever. And now we're reaching a point where they're reaching end of life. All the people that put the system in have retired or worse. So it'd be interesting to see for us what that inventory looks like. And I agree with you. The residents would much rather have a road paved. I get that. But if we can't do our taxes or water bills, all the rest of it, that's a bigger problem for us.
Correct. And that's one of the things I did when I first joined. I did an inventory of all the systems that we utilize. That's why we're currently moving to this new Tyler program for the tax billing and assessment, since that's such a critical program. Our GL system, it is old, but it is still working. The goal to upgrade the GL system would be to have better interactions with other systems to be able to be more efficient. So that's why that's not a critical upgrade that we're requesting. And then the third system that's critical is the water billing project. Obviously, we need to be able to record and send out water bills on a timely basis. That system is very old, unsupported, so we are working on upgrading that system as well. So we prioritize all the projects that we can handle at one time. The gas allocation system, the prior system just stopped working, so that was a problem. So that moved up the ladder. So we had to, get that done, and we just completed that that new system upgrade. So we have been monitoring and keeping track of all these systems and prioritizing, how many systems can we upgrade at one time. And over the last few years, we've done that. When I first started, and Mr. Swazi will attest to this, when I started here 8 years ago, we were utilizing, the finance department was using Lotus. So before Excel, there was Lotus, I'm told. So,
come on now. You know it was there.
And so, moving to Excel was a big deal. So it's baby steps that we're taking.
So you're saying then you're comfortable with what you've proposed here as far as the upgrade path to the systems that you used to run your department?
That's correct. Because of course, completely replacing these systems does take a lot of
100%,
resources from the staff. And so, we've laid these out so that we can complete them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does Tyler talk to your GL system?
No, it does not. And what's more needed for Tyler to talk to is the building department, because annually when the assessor updates the assessment roll, he takes into account the changes in assessed values for the properties due to building improvements, right? So the building department maintains that inventory. And so right now it is, they print out that information, it's in Excel, and then he's manually updating the assessment roll. Whereas, in the future, what's envisioned is having both systems speak to each other, so that that's just a matter of reviewing it versus doing any type of manual input.
Now, how many other modules does Tyler have?
Well, the DPW department utilizes them as well. Right?
Yes, worship purpose. The building department is moving towards that as well.
Any day now.
And I apologize, but there's something missing from the water department capital project, which I sent to her late. I think it's about $65,000. But this is tied into the water department's, the billing system she just talked about for water. One of the things we talked about in the EAB, and I'm not sure if I mentioned to the board, but we don't have any way of measuring the usage of water real time, and our customers don't either. We wanted to put an antenna system up with a server that would allow these meters, which have chips in them, to communicate to the central location, and the people, it would be able to get the information from that was used, daily, hourly.
We had that discussion before.
Yes, but it's not appearing in this thing. I think it's about $65,000. I'll get the exact number. I just can't get to my email from my phone for some reason here. But
talk to Ryan.
Yeah.
He can help you.
But I'd like to make sure, I'd like that change to go in here, and before the March 30th, I'll get the details here, but
because if I understood correctly from our last session, you want to have the program in which that the individuals who had an account could see what their water usage was, so that you could reduce the number of phone calls that you get saying, oh, by the way, we had a toilet running for 3 days. And
so the way it would work is their equipment would talk to our antenna and our server, and that server communicates to the cloud, and they can log into the cloud, see their accounts. The next evolution of the technology will allow them to see directly, but right now they have to go to the cloud. So it's a two-phase thing, but they can use it on the existing billing system. So the new billing system's in place, this technology can be forwarded, and it'll make us a lot easier. It will help us discover leaks. It'll help people who question their bills. We could show them daily usage.
Now, the other question is, to what extent would it have to change any of the meters or information transmittal.
So this is probably for another time since she's doing her presentation, but all the meters that we put in over the last 5 years, 6 years, all are radio read meters, but some of them are blocked by trees and stuff. So I think we did a study of the reach. We can get about 65% right now. And those that are not readable, we could put cards on or update them. So, but it's better than the 0, which is what we have now. I'm sorry.
Any other questions on the finance department? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on to other unallocated expenses and revenues. So unallocated expenses and revenues are typically not assigned to a specific department. So there's this other category of unallocated expenses and revenues. For unallocated expenses, the total budget proposed for 23-24 is $34.3 million. That's an increase of about 3% year over year. The top category of this unallocated expenses is benefits and taxes. I know Trustee Kelly, you mentioned the other night, where are the health insurance and benefits and taxes for each department? Where is that housed? That's here. So for the general fund, that totals $15.1 million. That includes health and dental insurance, pension costs, and taxes as well. Of course, we're seeing increase in health insurance costs, and this increase year over year of about $1.6 million also includes the 8 new positions that were added to the budget. The next category is capital projects. This is the cash contribution to capital projects for the capital plan. It's currently at about $4.2 million, which is a reduction from this year's budget. The debt service is the annual principal and interest payments on existing debt for the general fund, and that's about $3.9 million. The next category is the transfer to the library. So the village is funding about $3.6 million to the library this year. Insurance reserve, so every fund of the village, and you have the general fund, pool, water, tennis, and the library, each fund contributes towards the village's insurance into this insurance reserve. This insurance reserve helps pay for the workers' compensation insurance as well as general liability insurance for the village. The next line, highest line, is the contingency line. This is budgeted at about $1.5 million. I do want to note that this budget was prepared and finalized in early February, sent to the printers. So that was before a recent board meeting where the board approved executive raises. So the budgets that we're seeing does not incorporate those raises. However, on the March 30th presentation, we will be showing adjustments to each department to account for those raises, and the funding will come from contingency. So there will be no net effect to the tax levy. The next line item is legal fees. This includes litigation, tax cert cases, FOIL requests, any outside legal fees that are required for the village, that's in this number. When I presented originally the overview of the budget, I discussed the pool fund and how that's the only fund of the village that has a negative net position. As you can see, the village is transferring $800,000 to help supplement the debt of the pool. And once again, we're proposing that, and this is expected to, not be needed in future years. Judgments and claims, this is the payment of tax certs and SCARs, which are the small claims. So these are the tax grievances. When they are approved, that's where the payments come from, this line item. Over the last few years, the amount has been low as compared to 3-4 years ago, where it was way more than $1 million. We're anticipating that number to slowly creep up again. Okay, so the next unallocated revenues, these again are not assigned to specific departments. The highest contributor of unallocated revenues is federal and state aid. The vast majority of this aid is coming from mortgage taxes. Other non-tax items, these are mostly pilots. Non-property taxes, these are Cablevision franchise fees, and franchise fees and I think the majority is that, and also county sales tax. Use of money and property, this is the increases, the interest and earnings, the increase in interest rates. We are investing the village's funds and obtaining better returns on that. Sale of property or other compensation for loss, here's where any insurance recoveries come in, and also sale of property. If you see the change from the forecast, there was a reduction, and that's mainly due to the sale of some property to the LIRR in this current year. So of course, that's a one-time revenue item in 22-23. Next line item is parking revenues for all the village's parking lots and railroad stations. And I just want to note here, there is no increase in the parking revenues and the parking tickets that's in the budget. However, the board can decide to, raise those fees at any time. I believe last year the village agreed to not charge any revenues for 7N. So there is no revenues coming in for that. So that's the parking revenues line. So revenues are increasing about 19% year over year. And again, this is mostly due to the increase in interest rates. And the decrease from the forecast is attributable to two one-time tax revenues that were received in the current year. Okay, so that's unallocated expenses and revenues. Are there any questions on these items?
This references a sale of property from the Long Island Railroad expansion project. What does that relate to?
So a couple of years ago, the board agreed to sell a swath of land that's right on the New Hyde Park Railroad Station, which they had the Long Island Railroad had requested for their expansion project. And so the board approved the sale of that land and received about $700,000 in return.
And I'm sorry, Charlie, go ahead. I was just going to say, they use that as a staging area where they dumped a lot of their material, I believe, in that area. That we finally got them to move. So we did get 700,000 for them, definitely. Okay.
So that's the end of the presentations. I just want to mention the next meeting is on next Thursday, the 23rd, and we will be reviewing the police department, recreation, pool, and tennis funds. So now we can take any questions from the audience or on Zoom. Anyone? Miss, can you just use my microphone?
A couple of questions going back to DPW. The material and supply line, there was a rather large increase. Can you just explain what that increase entails?
Yeah, let's see if I can. Materials and supplies. It's $34,000 over the previous year.
Yeah, but from the forecast, it's 141, right?
Oh, that's the,
What it
is
is.
that the floor? Is there anything else?
Material, that would be under, would that be materials and supplies? Yeah, snow removal. The snow removal was $160,000. And we reduced it by 110 for the forecast. I left 50 in there for the forecast. But next year I had it back at 160. So from forecast, it's increasing substantially, but it's really the same number. It's just the way the forecast is lower because of the light season, but next year we expect it to be a normal season, so.
Okay.
It was 150, what, 160?
120.
120, okay.
Okay, and second question on the Meadow Street, you mentioned the cement section over by the trestle. I think I recall when they repaved Washington, that went from cement to asphalt, and I know that's a county job, but I don't recall them having to dig up the cement and then pave. Is there other conditions involved over there? Meadow?
You want to take it, John, or?
So it's best practice to get at least 4 inches of asphalt on top of the concrete so you don't have reflection cracking and failure of pavement prematurely. Washington Avenue is a wider street, so it can take those kind of grade changes, especially on the crowns, not so much at the curb lines. There is also a train trestle over there where we need to maintain clearance for vehicles and truck traffic that might be going down the block. So that's why it's recommended to remove the concrete panels and replace with new pavement.
Okay, thank you. I know we discussed the 7th Street Business District, and there's certain areas that the business is responsible for. And it didn't seem like it is for the homeowner, where the homeowner doesn't pay, it goes on the taxes. And it was more of a, we hope to get it back from the business. So I would hope that the businesses would be treated like the homeowners, and they would have to pay for the section of sidewalk or pavers that are their responsibility.
Is that a statement or a question?
And that's not really a question, but I just wanted to, I would hope you would, say okay to that. I mean, that they would be held to that standard.
So residents are responsible for the sidewalks in front of their homes. The former village council, Mr. B, researched it for us, and we found that it applies to the businesses as well. And that's where the basis for the capital project started. But back in the 85 or 87, 92, 97 timeframe, the streetscape that was put down at the time that we have out there now, I believe was funded completely by the village, with the understanding that, I don't know if the law existed, how far back the law goes, but that the businesses would maintain it. So that's the premise. The thing is, the downtown business district is a different animal than, a flag, a sidewalk in front of a home. So I totally understand what you're saying. I think what happens will come out of the discussion we have with the board. But the way it is written in law, they are responsible to maintain what's in front of them, including the portion that's our property.
Is there actually a formalized business improvement district, a BID?
No, that was at the time, and this is stretching my memory a bit, but at the time we were discussing this, we were talking about would a bid be a vehicle for this? I remember at the time I prepared for the mayor and board using Tom Donato, our assessor, through the finance department, to get a complete assessment roll so we can match the addresses of the business districts to their assessment values and see what it would look like to bond something over 20 years. So it would be paid for by the owners and not the village or the taxpayers. So we just never could settle on on a methodology or we never really got into details of which alternatives we'd even choose from, because you can pick and choose from each of the alternatives. So it just became just repair what's out there, but that became problematic as time went on with the reduction staff and then with the reduction materials and cost increases. So it's something that needs to be addressed, but.
Okay, because here is my institutional knowledge, which of course is old. Because in 97, when 7th Street was done, it had the pavers, and it was only 7th Street and a portion of Franklin Avenue. Then the commercial buildings wanted to have a similarity. And among other things, there was the movement of a particular house on 10th Street over one plot, which it was my understanding that the businesses paid for in order to get more parking spaces. So I do recall there being a formalized process for the businesses to pay for those, but institutional knowledge sometimes loses with the people as they move on. So
as far as going back in time, whenever I have a question like that, I ask village clerk Altman. She can dig up almost anything. And she usually does. And that's how I assembled that paperwork. But the maintenance issue became more prevalent because of the age of the pavers, the trees that have grown. And the streetscape project was severely underfunded the first time, but the $50,000 got us to the study. And then I believe this study cost another $150,000. There was a lot of work put into it, and it never really materialized into anything except regular, lift and lay down, which we don't believe is the right course of action at this point. I don't think we recommended it at the time, but there was so many capital demands placed on the village. And as you can see from Trustee Deegan, 65 projects, we're in a generational upgrade here.
having represented the villages of Great Neck Plaza up there who had a similar brick design, I litigated way too many of those cases. And the size of the bricks that we have now are prone to tipping, and a much larger brick would be vastly safer, at least in my mind.
Last time I was in Times Square, I actually made note of the size of the pavers, which get millions of people a month on them, and I'm saying this is the type of less seams, nice 12 by 24 inch, modern materials that won't wear the same, don't discolor at the same rate. But, just putting a new paver down without thinking about the other accoutrements of the landscape, the furniture, the street lights, the planting pits, the tree roots, and then, as I said, Chairman Kelly and Traffic Commission are looking at pedestrian safety things, which can be incorporated into all this. So it's if you do it piecemeal, it won't look right if you plan it. Like
Ralph, this is a curiosity question. When the tree roots, lift up the sidewalks, so which are causing some like tripping type hazards on Franklin Avenue across from Leo's, right? Is there a way of preventing it when you resurface?
So,
because I noticed the sidewalk.
So this is something Mr. Blake and I have talked about. Like when they plant new trees, they plant what they call street-friendly trees. If you drive around some of our neighborhoods, you see oaks on little 3-foot utility strips. They don't belong there; they belong in forest. But nonetheless, you're not going to tear them down and put a little birch there. The thing is that today, when we replace a tree, we think about, besides things like disease and stuff like that, we think about the roots that grow down. Now, there are things you can do, and Mr. Barone and I have talked about this. The mayor discussed this in previous budgets too. You could put things to try to direct the roots down, metal sheathing around it. But the tree roots, most of the problems we have in the neighborhoods too are our own trees.
Yeah.
That's why the village residents complain. You put the tree there. Some people replace the sidewalks 2 or 3 times over a couple of decades.
So we would put plates down over the
Well,
roof?
there's probably different treatments, but the thing is choosing the right tree to start. But some of the
But-
trees you're not going to tear down if they're healthy.
Yeah,
You know, you don't want to.
but there's a solution to the trees that you're not gonna,
There are solutions, but one of the things that come up in here.
yeah.
Let's say you have a root problem, you don't want to take the tree down, you could put a planter around the trees, and you could put a sitting platform like a stone face. So you can have a low wall and have planting beds and just leave the roots and the bark of the tree exposed. And I talked to Mr. Blake about this today, because I told him I was going to bring this up tonight. And he wasn't on board when this came up last time. So I'd like to, you know, this study is dated.
Yeah.
But the elements of it are timeless. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yes,
worth looking at.
you're right.
Yeah, just two more things if I could, please. The transfer to the pool fund, the 800,000, you mentioned this was the last year. Is that because the debt service on the projects are coming to a close?
So the main purpose to transfer the funding to the pool was to raise it into a positive net position. Over the last few years, the pool has had a negative net position, mostly resulting from the long-term debt that's on the books. There is still debt on the pool. However, it's expected that the operating revenues can cover all the operating expenses going forward for the pool, barring any, you know, non-issues like COVID that we had in the past.
And I'm not sure when 555 Stewart's planning to open, but is there any anticipation of income from that building in this budget year coming up?
The only revenues that we are anticipating are the other non-tax revenues, the other tax items. So 555 Stewart Avenue, the property owners obtain a Nassau County IDA. So they don't pay a full amount of taxes over the next 20 years. It's a gradual increase every year, but it's not the full amount of village taxes. However, the village did sign an agreement with them where they agreed to make the village whole on village taxes. So we budget for the difference between the pilot and the full amount of village taxes that's owed.
So is that amount in the other tax item line? Because I see the Marriott Hotel agreements listed.
That's correct. We have agreements with both.
Oh, okay, so
Property.
that's in this for the coming year.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your answers.
You're welcome.
Does anyone on Zoom have any questions for Irene or Ralph? Anybody have questions on Zoom?
Hello?
Mr. Wolf?
Yes, how are you? I have several questions on the water department.
Mr. Wolf? Oh, is
well,
that you?
yeah, I'm speaking.
Okay.
I have a few questions on the water department. Does the pool get billed for water, and does Adelphi get billed for water?
Everyone gets billed for water, including the fire department.
Okay. We basically received a lot of COVID money over the past year or two. I believe it was used for some pool expenses and some tennis expenses. Am I correct in that, Irene?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question, please?
The COVID money that we received in the last 2 years.
Oh,
What
did
was
you
that?
say the
COVID.
COVID? Yes, we did receive COVID related funding from FEMA over the last couple of years. Yes.
That basically would help reduce the amount of money we'd have to fund to the pool and the tennis court. So a lot of that money was used for these enterprise funds, which is supposed to be self-supporting. And I don't
I'm
remember.
sorry. Are you referring to the ARPA funding that was received by the village?
What does ARPA stand for? The American Relief?
Oh,
Yeah,
the American Rescue Plan Act. The village
Right.
received about $2 million.
correct.
Oh, are you referring to that?
Yes.
Yes. So the board has approved several projects to be used from ARPA funding. And
Can you be-
it is allowed to be, you know, the village can utilize that funding for any operational costs, including capital projects.
But it was used for enterprise funds. It was not used for the village. The
that
enterprise
is
funds are
village.
supposed.
It is part of the
enterprise funds are
village.
Supposed to be self-supporting. I don't remember,
Well-
I don't ever remember this being discussed at a board meeting.
I disagree. Every project that has been utilized from ARPA has been approved by the board. And per the federal guidelines that were issued by the Treasury Department, those funds can be utilized for any village purpose. There is no distinguish, you know, there's no distinction made between general fund or enterprise fund. We report to the Treasury Department every year on the utilization of those funds.
Okay, other than that, thank you very much, Irene. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome.
Anybody else on Zoom have a question? No questions.
Okay.
There being no
None?
questions, make a motion to
Just
close.
one thing before we close. Great job, Irene, Ralph,
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
John. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank Irene and her team also for all their work and especially for preparing these slides.
Oh, yeah.
You were really on top of everything, Irene. It was very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Motion to
Thank you.
adjourn. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.